Welcome to Lit with Lloyd. I am your host, Lloyd Russell. A shout out to KCAT, who sponsors our podcast. My guest today has an incredible story to tell, and we're going to talk about that. But it's a story about how his parents survived the Holocaust in Poland and around Poland. But it's also a love story. And I'm very, very anxious to talk to Henry. So welcome, Henry. Thank you for coming down and being a participant in this today.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
I wanted to just start by asking you, basically, how did you get to San Francisco, and how old were you?
I was 4 years old when we arrived in the United States on August the 29th, 1949. Like everyone, like all the immigrants, we started in New York. My father refused to take any kind of assistance. There were many people that wanted to help out the immigrants. He was offended by that. He said, I'm able-bodied, I'm young, I am an American. I'm going to make it. I'm not taking anything that I didn't work for. But it was very difficult for our family to make it in New York. He didn't have a language. He was on the metric system. He was on subways all day long. It was freezing cold in the winter. We lived in a 4-story cold water tenement in Brooklyn. For a view, we had a chimney and glass on the street. And my mother, the fear, she said, we survived the Nazis. We survived Siberia. We survived all this. Let's go to California. Let's start all brand new. It doesn't rain in California. The weather is beautiful. We had some kind of distant mishpucha in California. Not very helpful, but we had a destination. And so in 1950, in September of 1950, which was the centennial of California's independence or statehood, we arrived in San Francisco and lived in the Fillmore district of San Francisco, the Western Addition, on Ellis Street. I'm skipping ahead, but in my talks, people always ask me if I'm going to write a sequel, a follow-up, what happened in America. And I've decided on the title, The Miracle Child, From Ellis Island to Ellis Street. And I'll tell the rest of the story, how we made it in California. But this book is primarily my parents' story. And I don't refer to it as a Holocaust story. Like you said, it's a love story. It's set in that time. The word Holocaust is a turnoff for a lot of people. They cannot read the literature. They cannot view the films. It's very painful emotionally. This book, it doesn't happen in Auschwitz. No concentration camps. They ran east, Siberia, Kazakhstan. It's a whole different story. And I think that's why it's resonating with the public.
Mm-hmm. Well, I found it fascinating, and it does feel a little bit different from so many others like it, because oftentimes they are in the concentration camps. But how your parents avoided those is a story in and of itself, and we both said that it's a love story. Your book, Torn Lilacs, says a true WW2 story of love, defiance, and hope. And those three are extremely prevalent in this book. So we want to make sure that people know that it's available. I assume it's an audiobook as well?
Correct.
Good. And
Right.
Okay, so anybody can get a hold of it. And it's called Torn Lilacs by Henry Michalski. How did the book get started? How did you decide that you wanted to write it? When? How old were you? How old were your parents? And how did they react to you suggesting this?
Thank you very much. I didn't suggest it. My mother sort of insisted
Wow.
that this story be told. As a child, my first memories were those of other. I knew we were different. I heard the word survivor a lot as a child. Later, immigrant, refugee, all these words. Later, as I grew up, I heard words like amputation and Nazis and all this stuff, and it scared me. And I asked a lot of questions, and I was frightened as a child. And as I grew up, my mother noticed that I loved to write. I would naturally gravitated towards social sciences, history in particular, became a history teacher. And as time went on, I asked a lot of questions, and my mother felt that, Henry, this book has to be written. The world must know how we suffered for no reason at all, only because of our faith, how we were born. The world has to know, and Henry, you're going to write the book. And I kind of resisted for a while.
Why?
Well, I've never written a book before. It seemed like an awesome task to write a book. But I needed to know the story. And finally, in 1976, which was the bicentennial of the country, I finally conducted my first interview with my parents. I went to San Francisco, took a friend with me. The mistake was I had them both on the couch together telling the story. A lot of interruptions, a lot of corrections. That didn't work. So I went back numerous times, and I would interview them individually, sometimes together, and then I would go home and type it all out, and then come back and ask more questions in depth. My mother was a real stickler for the truth. She didn't like exaggerations. I used to read to her chapters, and she didn't like any embellishment, no exaggerations. She says, Henry, just tell the story. It's good enough. Just tell the story. It's good enough. And what was revealed to me now in chronological order, and it all started to fit together, was absolutely awesome. I could not believe what I was hearing, that people could go through such trauma in their life. In fact, that's the question that I'm most asked when I do my speaking tours is, in fact, my own cousin in Tel Aviv, Kuba's son in Tel Aviv, called me right away and said, Henry, my dear cousin, did you make up some of these stories? Did this really happen? I said, well, you saw your father hobbling around with no toes. He says, that I know. But all this other, I didn't know these stories. Kuba didn't talk about it. A lot of people who experience trauma, they're unable to speak.
And he's your brother. He's your mother's brother, correct?
My mother's brother, Kuba, who she ran with.
Yeah.
And Kuba had a son, Reuven, who's now in Tel Aviv.
Got it.
And Zahava, my two cousins. And he asked me if I made up the stories. And I said, Reuven, who makes up stories? The human mind can't imagine what happened during that time. It was pure evil. They made up evil as they went along, just whatever they wanted to do.
Okay, so you were roughly 30 when this started, if it's correct? Roughly in that range.
Okay.
And prior to this, did you know some of these things? Did you ever have occasion to ask them questions?
Yeah, of course. As a child, I used to watch my mother dress, for example, and she would always show me what she called her 15 holes from the gangrene in her legs. They punctured the blood, and it was gangrene, and she still had all the scars in her legs.
Wow.
And I saw that, and we talked about it. And then I heard of betrayal, and I heard all these stories. Which is why, of course, we did the interviews and put it together like that.
Wow.
And in the process, over time, because the first interview is 1976, it took a long time, but we've traveled to Israel, to Yad Vashem. We interviewed Tova, who was Kuba's wife. We went to New York to the Statue of Liberty, did some research, went to the archives in Washington. I went to Poland, to that small village, because I wanted to see it with my own eyes, and read a lot of books, of course, about this time. And then the art of writing the book started to reveal itself.
Okay.
And it is an art form.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that until I started writing, how creative you can be with words.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit. So you started the interviewing in 1976.
Correct.
How long did that last where you interviewed your parents?
A long time. 76. I mean, the book came out in 2020, and my mother, on many occasions, Henry, what's taking so long? And in fact, she died in 2019 at the age of 99.
Wow.
But a few months before she passed away, my brother and my mother called me I said, Henry, where is the book? We're waiting. They didn't know that it was 99% done. I wanted to surprise them and wrote furiously. I wanted her to live to see it, but my psychology friends tell me there was a reason that she didn't live to see it. But she's very proud of me right now.
Oh, I have no doubt about that.
I would like to believe that.
How old was your dad when he passed away?
He was 80.
He was 80. Okay. How did you guys, when you moved to San Francisco, how did you live? Did your dad get a job? Did your mom work?
Well, no, my mother, well, actually, yes. She actually cleaned floors. She was so embarrassed to tell me this. She was on her knees cleaning the floor. The rabbi in San Francisco had congregants that needed a housekeeper. And my mother felt, she felt really humiliated going into these homes on her knees, scrubbing the floor when she had kids at home. But she never actually had a job. She was a housewife, and a darn good one. My brother George was born in the United States in 1952 in San Francisco. He was the all-American kid. But my father was a sheet metal man, just like he was in Gustinine, as his father was and grandfather and all the rest. And that's what he did in San Francisco. When I was about 7, I remember he came home on Ellis Street one day, and he said, I'm in the union now, local 104, and I'm making $1 an hour. And I looked at my mother. I said, are we rich? You know? Later on, I just want to tell you this.
Okay, sure.
It was time for Thanksgiving in school, and we were making little buckles for the pilgrims and feathers for the Indians and stuff. And I came home, and I looked up at my mother, who was 5'2", and I said, Ma, do we celebrate Thanksgiving? Because we didn't do Christmas. We sang the songs with real enthusiasm, because my mother said, at school you're going to be like everybody else. At home you can be Jewish. But we didn't celebrate Christmas. We didn't get presents, nothing like that. So I looked at her and I said, Mama, do we do Thanksgiving? And she said, oh, yeah, of course. We have so much to be thankful for. I said, I thought that was for Americans. She said, no, we are so privileged to be in this great country of opportunity. We are so thankful. And I looked at her, I said, are we now American? We wanted to be American so bad. And in 1956, after they took the citizenship test, we all went down to Kearny Street in San Francisco to the immigration office, and they passed the test, for which they studied very hard. They went to night school. I can tell you some stories there, too. We became citizens. I was naturalized in 1956. And we went down to the Stevenson headquarters and got some campaign buttons and went to a restaurant for the first time in our life. The story I just wanted to tell very quickly. They were studying for the test, and they were determined to become American. And I'm sitting at the table. I'm 7 years old. Excuse me. And my mother is quizzing my father, who was the vice president? And he would say, George Washington. And then he would say to her, and who was the 16th president? She would say, Abraham Lincoln. I said, Abraham? Look around. Later, I heard he was, shot in the temple. I said, one of the boys. But I picked up a little history. First president, this. And of course, we were thrilled to become American citizens, and we just fell in love with this country. On the boat, I fell in love with this country coming over here.
Wow.
I was 4 years old.
Wow.
I remember my mother saying to me how privileged we were to be accepted into this amazing land where you can actualize all your God-given talents and gifts. You weren't limited like in Poland. You couldn't even drive a bus in Poland if you were Jewish. You couldn't be a teacher. You were prohibited from all this. It was like two separate societies living together unequally. And in America, she said, you could be anything you want. Do you realize how fortunate we are to be accepted in this country? We're going to be good citizens, she said. We're going to obey all the rules. We're going to create and build. We're not going to take things for free. We're going to contribute.
And she lived that all of her life.
Her whole life, and all of us too. We worked for everything we had.
Do you know how you were able to get on a ship to come to the country, to the U.S.?
Well, in the Lager, back in Germany, we were in a DP camp after the war. I was born in Kazakhstan, but eventually, when I was 2 years old, they came back. We lived in a DP camp, displaced persons, which I found out later, Russell. You'll find this interesting. Our camp was for Jews only for Jews after the war. Most camps were integrated.
Uh-huh.
I did a little research, and I found out the reason was the anti-Semitism was so palpable after the war. They were killing Jews after the war. It wasn't safe because the Poles who took over our homes figured we're all dead, and now they see these Jews coming back. They figured they're going to take their homes back.
Yeah.
And they were killing us. So we're in that camp. My father wanted to go to Israel. It was Palestine then. But he knew there would be a war. The Arabs would never accept Jews in that part of the world, to this day, as you know.
Yep.
And they also put in for the United States wherever we could go. And fortunately, in 1949, the United States Congress, under President Truman, authorized 200,000 Jews for permanent settlement in the United States. And we were selected. We were chosen.
Wow.
And I remember, the book ends with a little Yiddish, where we're in the camp, and I'm 4 years old. My brother Jerry is 6 or 7. And my father comes home from work, and he's waving a document, and he's very proud and happy, which was unusual. He had a smile on his face. And he said, "Morgen at Magaina for Grace shifts America." Jerry was jumping up and down. I had no idea, but he was jumping up and down happy. I figured I better jump up and down and be happy too. This is a big deal. And America had a resonance to it, like Disneyland or heaven, Oz, whatever. It's just a promised land where we can go. We're going to go to this incredible place.
Wow.
Yeah, we were thrilled.
Yeah. All right. Well, we need to take a very quick break. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with Henry Michalski.
Thank you to the City of Montessorino for their continued support of KCAT Public Media. The City of Montessorino has enabled KCAT to inspire, educate, entertain, and inform our community through the magic of television and digital media for over 38 years. Thank you.
And we are back with Henry Michalski. I'm a little bit not knowing what to say, because what you went through, what your parents went through, it's not fiction. Fiction is easy to handle. Nonfiction, not so much. And as you said, we're going through this kind of stuff right now, even as we speak. Okay, so let's get to the point where your book is ready. How did it become ready? Did you have early readers that weighed in? Did you have proofreaders, copy editors? How did you get to the point where it was ready to go?
Well, that's a good question. About 4 years ago, I went to see my friend in Arizona. I've got a good friend in Sun City West. Springtime, we were going to watch some baseball games, spring training. And he's a retired old guy, and he was a newspaper writer, and he wrote a book, and he's a friend of mine. And I was telling him that I'm in the finishing process, and, are you interested in editing? And he jumped at it. He says, yeah, wow, let's do it. So twice I flew down to Arizona in the summer. It was 116 every single day. Luckily, he had air conditioning. And we were determined. I said, Jay, I've got to get this book out. Help me. Okay. I remember one morning, I was there for about a week, editing, writing. He was in his office and I was doing my thing. And I said, Jay, let's not work today. Let's take a day off. I'm kind of, I don't know. He goes, Henry, we got to do this book. This book is a page turner. And that's the first time I heard that sentence. I never heard that before. I thought the audacity. Henry Michalski's going to write a book? I mean, come on, give me a break. And I wrote it again and again in various versions, first person, third person, omnipotent voice, all kinds of stuff. One version, I had her as a child polishing the candlesticks in the tranquil village of Gostinien and playing with her friends. And 40 pages later, my father comes into it. And one day I said to Jay, right there, I said, you know what? Let's just get my father and mother right, because that's what it is. It's a love story.
Yeah.
So I rewrote it 5-6 times. And I started right there where she's dancing in a club on the table, trying to bring joy to the hearts of these young Zionists who know that war is inevitable. The Nazis are going to invade. She's trying to bring joy and happiness. My father comes into that club in his Polish uniform. He's home on leave. He sees this beautiful, dark-skinned, black-eyed beauty on the table dancing. He falls madly, instantly in love that minute and vows that that woman is going to be his wife.
Wow.
Right there.
That's crazy.
She had a whole different idea about that. But he was persistent. He would not miss an opportunity to bring her some torn lilacs from the river. He went down to the river, and he always came with something. He was... he made himself indispensable. He was resourceful. And pretty soon it was just the two of them. And then the war starts and you tell the story.
Yeah.
It's basically, it's like teaching school. It's like people love a good story. And that was my goal, is to tell the story. And I remember 2 rules from literature, okay? Show, don't tell. In other words, don't say, the guy's crazy. Just write, make him act crazy. And then the reader can say, man, that guy was crazy. So show, don't tell, and keep the reader in the place. Smell, sound. What did it sound like? What did it smell like? What did it feel like? What was the texture?
Yep.
And I remembered those rules. And in every paragraph, I tried to include the reader. If you observe a few rules like that and tell the story, it took some time.
Yeah. Well, we want people to read the book, and one of the most interesting things to me is how long of a period of time during the war where they were not together, because each was on her and his own trying to make it. And I'm not going to say how long it is, but that's a very long time for that romance to be continuing.
Yeah.
And that's one of the best features of the book for me. Okay, so Jay was working with you,
Right.
and at some point Jay said, "Okay, it's ready."
Yeah. And I always thought I would self-publish because I understand the publishing world. They don't look at first-time writers. Agents won't. It was just, I just thought I'd be wasting time. I think in retrospect, it would have been better to find an agent and publisher. But Russell, I had no idea that the book would resonate like this. I figured I have to write the book, no question. This story had to be told. But I figured my kids would write it. Maybe Nathan would read it. Maybe some friends, and pat me on the back, nice going, and everybody's happy, right? But the reviews started to come in. And at first I thought they were trying to make me feel good or joking. I didn't know, but they were wonderful.
Wow.
And I said, really? Do you really mean it? And the reviews kept coming in, and I'm saying, oh my God, wow. And I've done almost 70 talks now.
Really?
Yeah, I've organized them myself. I just get on the phone. I'll call a JCC or a synagogue or a library, museum, whatever, and I try to tell them about the book. And I've got a website now and a pitch deck and all that kind of stuff.
So all of these tours, all of these talks, you've scheduled yourself.
Correct.
Have you done it throughout the state? Have you done it
nationally?
nationally?
I did a tour of Florida the first year. I had 14 engagements in 2 weeks.
Whoa.
I set them all up from Boca Raton down to Miami. I did that whole coast. And then mostly California, yeah. Next week, I'm very proud to say, I'm on the 22nd, which is a Sunday, I will be at the Simon Wiesenthal Center in Los Angeles, speaking at the Museum of Tolerance. And it doesn't get any bigger than that.
Wow.
I'm thrilled. Now, Russell, one of the other comments that people write There are over 200 comments on Amazon right now, all 5 stars.
Whoa.
And people are saying it's not a Holocaust book. It's an amazing book. I couldn't put it down. Did he make up those stories? Yeah. But the other thing they say is it sounds like a movie. It sounds like a movie. That raft scene going down the rivers of Siberia, the wide expanses of Kazakhstan, just the movement in the film. So I wrote a treatment, and while I'm in Los Angeles next week with the Heyer family, Rabbi Heyer and his wife, who now lets me call her Malka, they're going to introduce me to some Hollywood types because I'm very interested in seeing this on the big screen in order to reach millions of people with a message.
Yeah.
I think film is the best way to reach people, millions, because the message in this story, it's a love story, yeah, but there's some very potent and important messages also. For example, I think anybody, without me saying it in the book, anybody that reads it understands that the Jewish people absolutely need an independent, sovereign homeland where they can be secure and live in their indigenous homeland and produce and create and be left alone and not be threatened every 5 minutes.
Well, hopefully that will still happen at some point. But
we've always fought for everything we have.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to get back to the book. Who did your proofreading? Did you have somebody do
Jay.
that for you?
Yeah.
Oh, he did all that as well.
Yeah, Jay and a friend of mine up in Montana read a couple chapters and made some ideas like that. A few friends looked in on it, but basically me and Jay, we sat down and worked on it.
Great.
3 times or twice I went down there. Once he came up here, and finally it was ready for publication.
And when did it actually?
October 20, just before the election, and then of course COVID hit. So a lot of my first talks were done Zoom, which I don't like. It's impersonal. I couldn't sign books and sell. And then when I'm ready to go to LA, there's an LA strike, and then there's this. I don't know. But we're doing very well. I'm exceedingly proud of the way this book has been received.
Oh, that's fantastic.
And the accolades that it's won. It's won awards, all kinds.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of awards has it won?
The Eric Hoffer Award, the International, I don't remember the names, International Press Award, I think it's called.
Okay.
There were 4 awards.
Wow.
Yeah. I just put it in, just to see where it goes for the heck of it.
And you did end up self-publishing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. That obviously gives you control of it.
Well, the agents, I still would like to get an agent. They say since I self-published, it kind of ruined it all. But once you sell about 10,000 copies, they're going to take a good look, because then they know there's something there.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many, but I think I've sold around 5,000 right now.
Wow.
But
have you, in terms of scheduling talks and things, have you thought about doing this in Israel?
Absolutely.
And where is that?
What do you mean? Where is that?
Where are you with not where is Israel, but where are you? How much have you looked into that?
As a matter of fact, I'm thinking about going in November, next month.
Wow.
On a SARL, which is Volunteers for Israel. I've done that before. Israel needs volunteers right now. They need help. But as far as promoting Torn Lilacs, I've got not only relatives, I've got a lot of friends all over Israel, on kibbutzim in every city practically. And before I go, I would put together a tour. Universities, libraries, synagogues, bookstores, Stamansky, wherever. But I've got to do the field work.
Yeah, okay.
I'm thinking next year probably.
Do you speak Hebrew?
I can get by.
Okay.
Yiddish is my first language.
We just came back from Israel.
Oh.
And it seems like most people spoke Hebrew and not Yiddish. But I'm sure that'll be...
It's one of the great miracles of humankind is that an ancient, practically dead language was resurrected, Hebrew, when Israel was established.
Oh, wow.
And the Jews today can say that they're the only people on the planet that have prayed to the same God in the same language on the same soil for 3,500 years. Nobody can say that. And yet they want to tell us that we're occupiers, European colonialists.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I
know.
have to. It's troubling.
Yeah, of course, and I certainly want you to feel free to tell me anything that comes to mind. Are there other countries that you would do this touring?
I was with a friend on the way. I love dropping names. Coming home from Lawrence Livermore Lab, where I spoke, that was quite an honor. The lady I was with has mishpucha in France, in Paris, and there's a large community there. And she's allegedly organizing Paris as a tour, a reason for us to go there. I don't have a date for that or anything. I don't know. I want to go to Los Angeles first next week, see how that goes. I've got a number of dates. But eventually Israel, maybe somewhere in Europe, England, we'll see. Wherever the book takes me.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, mishpucha is
family.
Family. Yeah. Okay. Are there still other places in the Bay Area that you would like to speak at, or have you kind of hit them all?
I'm going to hit them all, but I can't believe that people don't know mishpucha. I mean, what is it? Okay. I've been all over the Bay Area. All over the East Bay, the JCC in Marin, all over Napa. So, in fact, the book is required reading at Sonoma State University.
No kidding.
And a course on the history of anti-Semitism.
Wow.
Taught by a rabbi 2 years in a row now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's the great of all Lawrence Livermore, whatever. That's the one I'm most proud of, because we need to reach young people.
Yeah.
They need to hear the message.
Yeah.
And so I'm so proud. I'm invited to the university every year after the students read the book. Rabbi Finley from Sonoma invites me to come in and talk to the students. And that's the best. Because these young people, they're not initiated in Holocaust, and they haven't got an idea.
Right. Wow, that's really terrific.
Yeah, it is.
You said that you actually taught history.
Correct.
Where and when?
I taught history at Napa High School. I started in 1968. I was 22 years old, right out of high school.
Wow.
Right out of college.
Yeah.
It was during the Vietnam War, of course. But I was, and then my principal, who was a military man, wrote a letter that Henry Michalski is doing his patriotic duty, teaching a generation of students their history. And I was exempt from the Vietnam War, which I wouldn't have served in anyway. It just didn't serve our purpose, I didn't think. But I started teaching in 68. I was 22. And I loved the career. I loved my career. I couldn't wait to get there. I didn't want to retire.
Huh. How long did you do that?
Well, right up until, I guess, 36 years. They gave us the golden handshake, which gave me 2 additional years with almost full credit. And this is one of the reasons Torn Lilacs is born, is the teaching. Because when I taught World War II, I would say 6 million. I would give numbers. No reaction. Their eyes would glaze over. Nothing. 6 million. Kind of reminds me, Stalin one time said, 1 death is a tragedy. 1 million deaths, a statistic. And it wasn't resonating. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm going to tell them this story. Because people can relate to other human beings in their quest. So it ended up being the best day of the school year, and I did it every single year. And when we taught history, I would tell this story. The kids were absolutely brilliant. They were silent. They paid attention. They were in tears. The bell rang. Nobody even moved.
Wow.
They were like paralyzed. They came up to the desk afterwards. Mr. Michalski, you got to write this book. They said, it sounds like a movie. You got to write the book. So they were a great inspiration.
Wow.
And then, of course, my mother, Henry, when you got to write the book? And I, here I'm laying on a beach in Hawaii with my family, and in the back right here, Henry, you should be writing the book.
Well,
but it's out there, and I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, you did, and we're all grateful that you did.
Thank you.
The only other thing that I would ask you is, has the book been published in any other languages?
Not yet.
So it has not been published in Hebrew?
Not that I know. No, not that I know of. I mean, things happen. No, the answer is no.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
yet.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be nice, though, to see it in Hebrew?
Yeah.
In different languages?
Yeah.
Maybe one day. We don't know.
Yeah. Well, if the movie thing, or I should say when the movie thing happens, then I'm sure it'll get a lot of international exposure.
That's not an easy thing.
We have interviewed a lot of authors. We know it's not an easy thing,
Right.
but I don't know. It feels like this is something that's going to resonate with
It's an
one or
extraordinary,
more.
It's an extraordinary story.
Yeah, it really is.
How they lost each other, how they found each other, the betrayals.
Yep.
It's got all the elements.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we'll close on that. I really appreciate you coming down. It's an incredible story. And we're going to close the book on today's podcast. Again, thanking KCAT for making this happen. And I'm going to strongly recommend that you get a copy of Henry's book because it is an amazing story. And as Henry said, it's not just about the Holocaust. It's also about love, a real love affair. So if you want to see other podcasts, you can go on lloyd.show/YouTube. And we'll see you the next time. Thank you.
You just heard Lit with Lloyd here on KCAT Radio. Explore all our KCAT original programming at kcat.org/radio.